To home here in Des Moines, gang activity is on the rise, but so is the number of gangs supposedly operating in the metro.
KCCI Cynthia Fodor has learned the number of violent shootings in the city has more than doubled in 2 years as police step up efforts to stop gang activity.
The first shot that was shot is actually the one that hit me.
Marissa Fletcher shows me how a random bullet hit her 6 weeks ago inside this door of her home.
Went through that lung, but it ricocheted off my ribs. It broke 2 ribs and went out my back like that far from my spine.
Her sister took a second bullet as more shots were fired.
Once she heard me say I've been shot, she was trying to help push me, and that's actually how she ended up getting shot in the leg.
Fletcher did not want to show her face. She's concerned about all the new gangs in the neighborhood.
You don't really know who's in a gang and who's not. And there's so many new ones now. There's gangs I've never even heard of, from when I was a kid.
I've learned there are now more than 30 known gangs operating in the city, marking their territory with graffiti like this. Police saw 329 gun-related offenses last year, with 80% concentrated in the historical gang-related areas of the city, and a significant increase in shootings with serious injury or death. This year so far, 13, up from 2012 when there were only 6.
We have an intelligence unit and a gang unit that specifically tracks those individuals. So we have an idea of who the players are in these hybrid offshoot gangs.
A summer enforcement team has officers targeting members, getting weapons off the street, and monitoring social media that has increased recruitment efforts locally.
So hopefully that helps keep it down, and something like this, what happened to me, doesn't happen to somebody else.
The summer enforcement team is scheduled to be out on patrol through September, but police say a decision may be made to extend that if necessary.
Greetings and welcome back. It's your host, Gabe Morales. Today we're going to cover the Iowa Department of Corrections and discuss some of the gangs that operate in the state. I know that report that you saw is just over a dozen years old now, but I will try to give you some accurate updates later in this video. The Iowa Department of Corrections is a state agency operating 9 facilities within the state. It has its headquarters in Des Moines, and the current director of the agency is Dr. Beth Skinner. This agency is also overseen and audited by a state board. The Iowa State Penitentiary in Fort Madison should not be confused with the historical Iowa State Penitentiary, which was shut down in the year 2015 after being open for 175 years. That penitentiary was established in 1839, 1 year after Iowa became a territory, and 7 years before it became a state in 1846. Many famous individuals were housed there over the years, including Gregory Scarpa Jr., a high-ranking member of the Colombo crime family who was held there on an interstate compact before being granted a compassionate release at the end of his life due to cancer. I did an episode on the Colombo family and Scarpa's violent role in multiple murders, and did a whole series on the 5 families in New York if you're interested. An inmate named Warren J. Nutter was only 18 years old when he was sent to the prison after pleading guilty to killing a 52-year-old Independence police officer named Harold Pierce in January 1956. Pierce was questioning Nutter and 4 other teens at a sheriff's station about a gas station robbery when Nutter asked to be excused to use the restroom. He was granted that and then climbed out an open window, retrieved a shotgun from a car outside, and shot Pierce when the officer tried to stop the group from leaving. Nutter was captured 3.5 miles away. He was sentenced to death, but that was commuted to life when the death penalty in Iowa was abolished. He died in prison in 2021, being 84 years old. Most of the state penitentiary was commissioned in 1872 in order to be an additional penitentiary since the old pen was already overcrowded. It still operates today, and as of 2016 was home to approximately 855 inmates, with another 175 in segregation, and had a staffing of 357 employees. The main role of the Iowa Medical and Classification Center in Oakdale is to serve as reception and classification center for adults being sent to other facilities. Inmates are interviewed there, and their criminal record and behavior are taken into account before they're assigned to another prison. The center has a medium security general population unit and also has a psychiatric hospital, which holds up to 28 patients while they're being evaluated for mental competency. There are also the Clarinda, the Fort Dodge, Mount Pleasant, Newton, North Central facilities, as well as the Iowa Correctional Institution for Women. Riot occurred at the pen on September 2nd, 1981, that lasted approximately 11 hours. Several inmates started this uprising by taking 4 hostages, among them Security Director James McNee and Assistant Security Director Larry Moline, who were later released in exchange for the offenders being allowed to talk to local news media about their grievances. In addition, 8 newly hired employees at the pen were also taken hostage and were forced to trade clothes with the offenders. Most of these employees were beaten. It is estimated that 60 of the 90 inmates in the cell block were outside of their cells when an assault team burst in. It also was discovered that an inmate, Gary Eugene Tyson, was murdered for being a suspected snitch. Tyson was said to be a member of the Almighty Vice Lords, a gang that originated out of Chicago. More than $1 million in property damage was done during the riot. This incident soon led to the shutting down of the old original state pen. When a lot of people think of Iowa, they think of corn growing in large rural fields. But the state also has several urban areas, as well as gang activity. As far as security threat groups within the Iowa Department of Corrections or out in the street, I understand that Serranos are fairly active there. On March 7, 2022, a shooting occurred near the East High School in Des Moines, right before students were dismissed for the day. At least 35 gunshots were fired out of at least 3 vehicles. One 15-year-old boy was killed, and 2 female students were critically wounded during this incident. Soon, police arrested 6 teenage males, ranging from the ages of 14 to 17, who were charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. 4 were charged in adult court and 2 in juvenile court. And this incident was described by police as having gang overtones, stemming from an ongoing violent conflict between 2 rival Hispanic gangs. Some Mara Salvatrucha members have also been located by police in the state, arrested, and deported. As in many other states, gangster rap has affected the minds and actions of many Iowa youth. YNE Bozo is a local rapper from Des Moines. He also has a lot of TikTok videos, and I believe that he runs with the Bloods. Davenport, Iowa had a gang called Savage Life Boys, a gang that was named after the rapper Webby, whose debut album was called Savage Life. Savage Life Boys, or SLB, has been described as a hybrid gang with no clear leadership or rules. Hybrid gangs is a term that I first heard in the 1990s to refer to gangs that did not follow the Los Angeles or Chicago traditional models. While both big cities did generate hundreds of homegrown gangs with their own general styles, such as Crips, Bloods, Serranos, Folk, or People Nation, it is my contention that even those gangs have evolved over the years, so could be called hybrid. The LA and Chicago gangs of the 1980s and 90s today barely resemble how they operated back then, and if anything, have become less vertical and more horizontal, with no clear leadership and few rules today either. In 2023, 2 Davenport men were sentenced in relation to a racketeering case. Austin Zachary Ruiz was sentenced to 202 months in federal prison, and Alajuan Hakeem Kobreth was sentenced to 152 months in federal prison. This case cited that in 2016 and 17, as members of SLB, Ruiz, Kobreth, and their friends became infatuated by the lyrics and songs by the rapper Webby, and they wanted to create their own street legend stories. Thus, SLB was born. Both individuals were involved in multiple shootings, and it was alleged that Ruiz and Kobreth committed these acts with the intent to maintain or increase their position within the gang. A federal grand jury in Davenport convicted 5 gang members in May of 2024 in another RICO case. These individuals were said to belong to the Enterprise, whose origins began in Rock Island, Illinois in the late 1990s to early 2000s. At that time, members and associates of the Enterprise referred to themselves as the Arsenal Courts Posse, a project housing complex. Soon, younger members and associates of the Enterprise began referring to themselves as Zone 5th, or 5th Street Mafia, and continued to represent the Enterprise. It also sometimes went by Rocktown Money Get Us, or Money Team, and I understand we're more of a money gang, which again, many people called hybrid gangs because they're more concerned about money or the color green than red or blue or black, and have very few rules except for finding ways to make money via illegal activities. Outlaw motorcycle gangs also have a presence in the state. El Forasteros have a clubhouse there, and the Sons of Silence have a chapter in the state, and as you see, get along with Defiant Souls. Once again, these clubs insist they are not gangs, and point out that they do many good things for the community and are just a brotherhood. In spite of the bleak outlook, in some parts of the Hawkeye State, there are efforts to prevent kids from engaging in gang activities. Individuals like Fritz Grant are trying to prevent our kids from falling into the traps of the fast life, doing drugs, doing shootings, going to prison for life, or maybe even ending up dead.
After a gang-related shooting at a Des Moines education center left 2 people dead on Monday, Sioux City officials say that gang activity indeed still happens here in Siouxland.
That's right, KCAU 9 News reporter Nick Wilson is sharing now how gang activity impacts Sioux City and also what people have done to help our troubled youth.
Thanks, Tim and Sophie. People I spoke with tell me gang issues in Sioux City have improved immensely since the 1990s, but there's still more work to be done. Fitz Grant has been working with the Sanford Community Center since the 1990s to help youth in Siouxland. He recalls gang activity being quite frequent back then in Sioux City.
You know, you had kids bringing weapons to school. Kids were actually gang banging, fighting within the schools. You saw a lot of graffiti in our community, things of that nature.
The Sanford Community Center launched its gang outreach program, and Grant began going into schools and educating kids. He says while reducing gang activity is a continuous effort, he's proud of the progress Sioux City has made.
The activity is very minimal in our community. You don't see a lot of graffiti in our community. You don't see a lot of kids dressing out in our communities. Our efforts have suppressed a lot of the gang activity in our community.
Zachary Nelson is a supervisor with Juvenile Court Services. That department works with minors who commit crimes, and most of those are simple misdemeanors.
Things like shoplifting, simple assaults, or things of that nature. But then we get into a lot more serious community safety types of delinquent acts, and so you're talking about burglaries, you're talking about sex abuse.
Nelson says rehabilitation is essential, and that starts with closely monitoring troubled youth.
Making sure, they're going to school and banning certain areas that would be unhealthy for them. And so that suppression effort is, one part of it.
Nelson says gang members like notoriety, so his department does not identify the names of any Sioux City gangs. Nick Wilson, KCAU 9 News.
Before I go, I'd like to give another shout out for the Midwest Gang Investigators Association. Iowa's just one state of several that has a chapter in this great organization. Also, a few words of wisdom from Luis Ruben Diaz Cepeda, who wrote Social Movements and Latin American Philosophy. From Ciudad Juarez, Ayotzinapa. He states, freedom without responsibility quickly becomes chaos. That chaos can quickly lead you to incarceration. So be responsible for your own actions and make good choices in life if you want to remain free. And with that, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians.